Ba ba doom bing blah boom bing bong da bee doo ba dee ga doom bing ba doo bing blah boom ba ba dee do ba 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 da 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 ba 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 dee bee ba ba da ba da ba da bee ba 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 doom bing blah boom bing bong da bee doo ba dee ga doom bing ba doo bing blah boom ba ba dee do ba.
I remember telling teachers there that, oh, I don't have to learn how to spell. I'm going to be an artist. You know? I was born in Wichita, Kansas, out in the suburbs. Pretty big family, 4 sisters, older brother, all in a little house, 2-bedroom house, and we all the kids were in the basement. Wizard of Oz every year out in Kansas, big time. I forget, about this time of year, late November, they would do, Wizard of Oz would come up once a year. I don't know if it was everywhere in the country, but it was in Wichita. And that was like the mantra. I went to the Art Students League in 1970. From reading all those books in Kansas, in some way I still imagined that Jackson Pollock would still be there, or Rauschenberg, or Warhol for that matter, you know. I still expected all that to be there. So.
Sucker.
That hand, the middle of this point should be about here.
I started working at the Museum of Natural History in New York in '72, and I really considered that my college. I got a job, I just loved the place, and I would go and apply constantly, and I finally got an opening as a night watchman there, and I'd work it from 10 at night till 7 in the morning. It was great. I just, you know, you have these clocks, and you go around every hour and go all through the museum, and you do it really fast for 20 minutes, and then you learn to lay down on a hard wooden bench and sleep for 40 minutes, and then somebody wakes you up, and you go out again for 20 minutes and come back and sleep for 40 minutes. So that was the system. But while you were walking around, it was great, just visual information. Everything in the middle of the night, you're all alone, you've got the museum to yourself. It's like a dream.
I need 4 inches this way.
We lived at the time, already we lived on the Lower East Side, but it was a very different scene than it is now during this period, 78, 79, 80. And it very Dominican and botanicas everywhere with these strange objects, and I would see them and I'd think, well, they could sell these candles for $8.99. There must be a way for me to make them like that. And then John Ahearn and I were close, and John was working already with Rigoberto up in the Bronx. And Rigoberto's uncle Raul had his plaster shop, and he made these things. Jesus, painted plastered Jesuses and Elvises that he would sell to working class people for $12.99, a big leopard, $39, and I thought, well, this is the context I've dreamed of. And it's the factory that I wanted. I would see this factory stacked to the gills with employees casting and painting. And I thought, that's what I want. This is for me. And that was kind of the beginning. The $4.99 sculptures, the first ones I made, the first 4 were a guy sitting alone, a pair of figures boxing, a pair of figures fucking, and a pair of figures in a kind of spiritual arising, I suppose. And then soon after, a death figure. I made a little stand. I found, as was our tradition, I found some thrown away display stand and converted it into a display stand for my sculpture and made a Christmas sale thing there. And I did pretty good, I remember I made $400, $500, and I kind of divided my hours, and I thought, well, I'm doing as well as I was doing sheetrocking. I think I can go with this thing, But it's true that I did from the very first, in these little tiny 6-inch figures, I thought of them as monuments, almost skipping the monument and starting with the souvenir. It's a souvenir of a huge monument. The little Michelangelo that you buy, well, I skipped making the big one. I started making the little one. This whole project started with Bob Herman, with a friend of mine who's the head of the Broadway Mall Association, and kept asking me, you want to put a sculpture up here? And I kind of blew it off. I thought, he must be kidding. But 5 years later, 3 years later, something like that, we got the whole thing up, 24 sculptures up. So we're heading over to Broadway, gonna go all the way from 59th up to 165th Street. The whole See No Evil thing started with the election, really, at a small scale. I did this little postcard, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Count No Votes, from the 2001 election. And then they kept getting bigger. In this progression with collaborative projects, we started making shows, and those shows culminated in the Times Square show. And the 50 of us in collab plus another 100 artists that were pulled in from different organizations and friends all took over a massage parlor on 42nd Street. And the show, as I remember, was open day and night all through the summer. Wild things happened, performances, a kind of chaotic hanging system, who was where, kind of like territorial. It's like the California gold rush. I remember Jean-Michel was there and ended up doing graffiti in the middle of the night on all these other artists' work. I hung a boxing bag. There was a mural behind the boxing bag where people would write, and guys on the street would come in and show their boxing stuff off. There were performances and films downstairs. And we had a souvenir store that I was organizing, and almost everyone in the show had something there. Kiki had a lot of stuff. I was looking at early sales books, and Kiki Smith outsold us all, would chop up 2x4s and paint them as cigarette packs and sell them there. I had an idea to make this frieze, this kind of narrative plaster frieze that I would sell by the foot. And it was again, sort of like the Botanica sculpture, it was an imitation of classical cornice molding, friezes around the cornice molding around a room. And I remember coming into Brook with drawings, Xerox drawings of all these this detailed narrative about the overthrow of a king, and pulling down a big penis, and the king kissing the elephant's ass, and men and women in this kind of diorama together. And God bless him, he looked at these Xerox drawings and said, yeah, let's go. And go into collectors' houses with a tape measure and go, okay, you'll get 22 feet at $500 a foot installed. And from here, we're heading north up toward Lincoln Center. And we'll see the frog prints. And the frog prints in Lincoln Center, I thought, had some kind of, Nutcracker sweet fantasy connection to the opera and ballets at Lincoln Center. So it seemed like the right thing. We're up around 66th Street in the trial scene. We're just driving by. Cat on trial, feather in its mouth. Dogs and birds and mice are the jury. I did it during the O.J. Simpson trial, so you figure it out. I don't know. I try to think of the Battery Park piece of the real world as a kind of map of a social political map of New York for little kids, so they could understand the context of where they were growing up, money and social situation. And at one point I had a mythic setup where the DNA chain was the beginning, and Adam and Eve, a kind of monkey, Darwinian Adam and Eve began the piece, and the serpent of knowledge in that scenario was up on a lamppost was Malcolm X reading from a book overlooking Manhattan. I had the lamp itself brought into the studio, these typical street lamps, and built the sculpture around it with the light on so that I could have Malcolm X reading by the light. So there is this big spread of imagery from the whole gamut of dancing on money bags and yeah, we're rich, yippee, and down to, well, we're down to the last penny, and we're homeless on the sidewalk with the dog. big penny is part of that cycle that I just described of all the things between rich and poor. It's working, here we are, right here. It's rich guys at the top, drinking champagne, working guys at the bottom, pushing this penny along, one of them about to get smashed by it. And there we have another customer. I like having this kind of fishing expedition here. So the worker at the bottom's about to get rolled over by the whole thing, and the rich are about to be rolled down. And then across the street is the marriage of real estate and money. So it's this happy marriage, big penny, smiling, kind of chubby, and the house with a skirt and a flower on, happily married. There were some big real estate guys here that helped back up the benefit, and they came out. We did some publicity shots together with me and the real estate salesman that went into some real estate newspaper, you know.
They love the marriage of real estate and money.
I must say that the real estate people in general have been very happy with the show, which has its own, you know, conflict.
I've been walking up from 60th Street, and I've been trying to see all of Tom Otterness' work, because I think they're just fabulous.
Coming from Kansas and having played Monopoly all my youth, you know, it's unavoidable to be on Broadway and have this dream come true of being able to get this real estate all the way up Broadway. I had to think back, actually they call it Boardwalk instead of Broadway, just to make it not so specific, but it's the same idea. And these are very, you know, I think the top hats, the imagery, the money bags, the imagery all comes out of Monopoly. And these could be Monopoly pieces. Here we have the King and Queen, 103rd Street, a part of a chess set, really, that have been blown up with money bags for heads. And I always think of public art as a kind of claim of real estate. It's my excuse to Colleen that that's why I'm spending more money than I'm getting on these projects, is that we actually own, you know, the 14th Street subway station. It's like owning the train station in the Monopoly game. So I've been playing Monopoly in New York, and I've got a lot of property here. So we're coming up to the Bear, 96th Street. And we've got customers here too. This is a community center, and it seemed like a great place. A kind of 30s style building, which you know I love. I like it at this scale that it's the real scale of a bear that could really be menacing, but seems defenseless or something. It's the way I imagine my daughter sees me. That's how I constructed this as a self-portrait. It's based on my daughter's Bear, and it's my imagination of imagining how Kelly sees me. There's always a chance in this public work to make some very personal thing fit into a public symbol. And the giant is that. I mean, I am sometimes very sad.
Yeah.
And this comes out. So we're here. I remember making the first model for it, and little pieces of little spheres of wax and some wire, and bent it and had the gesture of it, had the basic gesture of it down in less than 10 minutes. When I first mocked this piece up, in some sense it's philosophical. I think of these geometric solids as being sort of symbols, philosophical symbols. So you have the pure cube and the pure sphere sitting on top of each other, and the sphere about to fall off of the cube. I could have stopped there. In a way, it's got its own abstract meaning. And then to that abstract sculpture, boing, you add arms and legs, these kind of spindly 20s animation style arms and legs coming out of it. And then this third element, this kind of another sphere hanging out over the edge. I think there's something about a giant, this heroic giant, that we don't expect it to be crying. We don't expect this kind of emotion from this monument. The one request I did have, again, a kind of positive one, was the community boards up north were sure that they were going to be slighted. They wanted more sculpture. So, I don't know if the camera can feel it, but we've rolled into a different world up here. We've gone through Harlem, and we're now in really Spanish Harlem or Dominican turf. And up here they use the malls differently. I just thought it was nutty to have this thing up here. Dad is the bull, Mom is driving with the pipe, and the kids are strangling each other out the back end. It's your typical family vacation, you know? Someone said to me, oh, you know, it's like the mom's gonna turn around and go, don't make me stop this wagon.
Well, we literally started at Columbus Circle. I said, look, Sunday morning will be perfect because there won't be a lot of traffic. So 9 a.m. we were at Columbus Circle, and we've literally driven all the way up.
So we haven't missed anything.
We're actually doing the other way around.
Yeah,
I went to 168th Street and we're walking down to Columbus Circle. Yeah. And that's,
so you're going to go the whole way?
Yes, absolutely.
I've done that a few times. It's 5 miles.
It's wonderful.
It's
Wonderful. I mean, that's the way to discover New York, but also we really enjoy the sense of humor in your artwork. I think it's fabulous to add a bit of humor to this city. It's
We're on 146th Street. I loved it here on this big, long, open area where everybody sits. It seemed like the perfect place for this big, long, 37-foot piece. Gulliver, the whole idea, I keep doing it over and over again. Big figure chained down, little tiny people versus big, huge sculpture. And it's been condensed and simplified to not a bunch of Lilliputans, but one. And the one has a key behind its back and is in this endless negotiation with Gulliver as to whether she will unchain him. It does feel like a continuation of what we did in Collab to get this idea of getting modern art out of the art world into a more popular audience. And we're 157th and Broadway, crawling up, and we've got a park across the street with the lion and the mouse. The lion's tied up, the mouse is negotiating with them to see if he'll chew through and let him free. Here we've made it to the final piece. We're up 168th Street, and the DNA chain is here, and it seemed, yes, forlornly and pretty hard to find. Even I have to look to see where it is, you know. Oh well. But it seemed to have some relationship to the hospital here, and so I tagged it at the beginning. And I always liked, I've used it before, it seems like the beginning of life up here. Really the whole invitation from Macy's came out of the guy that runs the parade deal, seeing the Broadway work and popping the big question. So it's an extension, it's sort of the other end of Broadway now. So 59th to 165th, and now, okay, a little overlap, and then we'll go down South Broadway to 34th.
The parade started in 1924, and the first year that Macy's had balloons in the parade was 1927. It's an annual tradition, and we're happy to do it again this year. We have 51 balloons, 14 giant balloons. 14 giant balloons like Scooby-Doo and Big Bird at that end of the block, and Chicken Little and Charlie Brown at this end of the block. But if you walk around to 81st Street, you'll see some more of our giant balloons, Dora the Explorer and Jojo the Circus Clown, as well as Ronald McDonald, our oldest balloon in the parade. am standing right here next to one of our brand new balloons. This is our brand new Humpty Dumpty. He'll be floating down, or actually falling down Central Park West and Broadway towards Macy's upside down. Hi Tom, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Would you like to say anything?
Hi everybody.
So when did you first?
Okay. Wow, I'm a newsman. Let's pretend it's an interview. So Tom, how did you first come up with the idea of Humpty Dumpty, and how long ago was it before we see it here in front of us?
It all started about 4 or 5 months ago. I made a little model about 2 feet big, and they took it and turned it into a balloon. And that's all happened in 3 months.
Are you ready?
Slow down.
Proud to see. All set. It's all yours. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Now we have a very special balloon. First balloon ever designed by known artist, the great Tom Otterness, who designed Macy's Parade Humpty Dumpty with the King's Horse and Man, surrounded by our jester clowns. Welcome to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Happy Thanksgiving!